I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
That's Booby.
And Jumpy and Ghosty.
Is this a alliance pick or
no? This is JLU.
JLU.
I know.
Shout out to the big homie.
Right.
What's up, JLU?
I know, and JLU is so cool because Patreon is not always the best forum. Like, I feel like they have a lot of flaws, and so I didn't realize.
We were supposed to have a meeting with them. They reached out to us about 2 months ago.
I would have so many things to tell them.
We were supposed to have a meeting with them, but
anyway,
I was busy. Sorry, Patreon.
JLU was like, all of a sudden I realized, wait, we owe this person some reviews. And so I reached out and they were like, oh yeah, I just knew you had a lot on your plate, so I didn't mind waiting. I'm like, what? It's so nice. So anyway, we're gonna get these out to you soon, quickly. We've already done one. This is our second one. We have one more.
Yeah, Belphegor. I don't think we've done Belphegor. I mean, it looks like this is a black metal band.
Yeah, it does.
The name of the song is No Resurrection. It looks like there's a goat and a dude in the woods.
It doesn't look like a dude to me. That looks like a woman.
Really? I mean, either way, it's a pretty spooky picture.
This area is a little puffy, I think, to be a band.
Oh, I didn't even see that there. You have such a good eye. You're like Dorian on Fortnite. Dorian be like, there's a guy over there on the ridge. I swear, we really need to get that Twitch stream up, because if people saw how we handle our Fortnite business, they'd be like, whoa.
Yeah, also no kids would be able to, the parents would ban them. They're like, all that cursing?
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't happen on Fortnite.
Are you insane?
I think Dorian, it gets pretty aggressive. He's like, mother...
It's you! You do the most cursing!
Well,
and then the kids jump in on it.
Well,
I'm like, stop! No!
You gotta have... You gotta have,
It's unnecessary.
Speed, element of surprise, violence of action. You gotta be violent. Cute. You gotta be violent. Extreme prejudice.
Whatever.
Okay, so this should be interesting.
And check out this picture. This is Matt sporting the Sori secret shirt.
There he is. There's a big homie, Matt. Don't mess with us. We some gangsters over here.
Yeah.
Some people, they're really cool when they do their poses, man. And that shirt is perfect for it.
I know. I'm curious to see what people are going to come up with for shirts on the next one.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so let's do it. Belphegor, No Resurrection. It seems straightforward. I'm going to have a guess on what this song's going to be about. You ready? Go!
Holy moly!
I like it.
I turned up to 10.
I love this stuff. Turn it on, baby!
Yeah.
first of all, let's take a thumbnail picture. We need to start doing more of those. It's fun. No resurrection. So actually, this song sounds pretty straight up, but if you're familiar with Gnosticism, especially the proto-Gnosticism that you see in the New Testament, to me, this looks like a Gnostic song that could have been written by the proto-Gnostics in the New Testament. Which, what's interesting is the Gnostics claimed to be Christians initially. So, I understand it might sound like your standard black metal song, oh, destroy the remains of Christ, yada, 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 yada. But especially docetic Gnosticism or Docetism, so the concept of Docetism was a form of Gnosticism that went way back, which basically means that the physical world is bad. Anything physical is bad. And in order to free yourself from the physical world, you need a certain type of gnosis, secret knowledge, right? And one of the main revelations in this secret knowledge was that Yahweh of the Old Testament, the one who created matter, was actually a lesser god. He was kind of like he was a third tier type of god. And he was so foolish that he created matter, which matter is terrible that you're trying to free yourself from, right? So like right there at the end, you foolish ghost of God.
Yeah.
That Gnostics directly called Yahweh of the Old Testament a fool. Like that's literally the term that they use. Right, because you're trying to escape matter, and here you are creating matter. How foolish can you, how dumb can you be? You created a physical universe. Yeah. The other thing about the Gnostics is that they believed that Jesus was good. The problem is, if Jesus was good and a good teacher, but he came in a physical body, then obviously he can't be good. So that's what actually Docetism means. It means to seem or to appear. So their theology was Jesus never really actually had a physical body. He just appeared to have one. So there's a famous docetic Gnostic picture of somebody being crucified and then Jesus pointing and laughing at it because it's like, you think it's me, but it's really not me. Which I believe actually inspired Surah 4157 because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was influenced by Waraka, and Waraka was a Gnostic. So, and he uses the term to seem when he talks about the crucifixion. The Jews say that they've crucified Christ, but they did not. It only appeared to them as such, and those who disagree and are in speculation, whatever. I think that's what it says in Surah 4157. So, my point is that this sounds really close to Gnosticism, and again, that's why you have in 1 John where John says, if anybody denies that Jesus came into the flesh, he is the devil and the Antichrist. Because the Gnostics were denying that Jesus came in an actual physical body. So it's really, really interesting because, and of course Gnostics don't believe in a bodily resurrection, which the entire Christian church staked its entire validity or invalidity on. Right. So this could have easily been written by a Gnostic. And again, these guys claim to be Christians in the first century. That's why 1 John was written. To say, no, they're not Christians at all. They're actually Antichrist. And then later you have Cyprian and all these guys in early church history saying, if you see a Gnostic in the street, cross the street, lest your cloak is defiled by their presence or something like that. Like it was not a good relationship.
What did you think about this where he said sepulcher of, is it sepulcher?
I think it means sepulcher of hypocrisy.
Okay, so like the place where hypocrisy resides.
Well, a sepulcher is a burial place.
Oh, right, that's right.
Guys, please be quiet! Or is that? Yeah, a sepulcher is a burying place, and so the name of the song is No Resurrection, so it goes with the theme of death.
Well, so that of hypocrisy, and then it says light of holiness forever now extinguished. So can you be holy and a hypocrite
at the same time?
You know what I'm saying?
That's a very good point, because it is. So I get the frustration with hypocritical Christians, but your point is well taken. People are also mad at holy and consistent Christians too.
Right.
Because they'll go, oh, you're holier than thou.
Right.
Well, some people are more holy than other people.
Right.
I've run into a bunch of Christians that are much more holy than I am.
Right.
So it's like, okay, when they're living inconsistent with their worldview, you're mad at them because they're hypocrites. But then when they live consistent with their worldview, you're mad at them because they're holy. Mm-hmm. Well, which is it?
Yeah.
No, that's a genuine...
Okay, so you don't like Christians.
Right. That's a genuine question. That's a very, very good point. Because it's like, people love to rail against the hypocrisy in the church, but then when you run into a guy that's actually consistently holy, he's going to say, well, God says that this is sin, so I'm not doing it. And you know what's funny is like, and I don't really see this among, Satanists or whatever, but that's, I used, when I was in high school, in 14th Street in Greenwich Village, they had the vamps and whatever, and they used to stand outside the shops and drink each other's blood and be dark.
But so gross.
They didn't talk about God a lot. It's just about pretending to be edgy or whatever. But you see this most, like the resentment of holiness.
Yeah.
You actually see that more in the church. I actually see that more in the church than with Satanists.
Yes.
So you run into somebody who, and it's funny, like the person doesn't even necessarily have to say what you're doing is sinful. They'll just say, nah, I don't participate in that stuff, and I'm trying to focus on my relationship with God, so I just feel like that would be a distraction. Immediately, people, look at this guy, he's really holy. It's like, so most of the time, I see that kind of criticism coming from Christians who, for whatever reason, are comparing themselves to another Christian and can't make the grade, and so now they go after them, and then they claim that they're acting holier than thou or whatever. But yeah, like that last, and the other thing that's interesting about the docetic Gnostics is they believe that since the physical world was worthless and terrible, anything you did with your physical body didn't really matter. So you can indulge in all types of craziness with your physical body because God doesn't care. What he cares about is what's inside of you.
Although, what you do with your physical body affects what's inside of you.
And what you do with your physical body many times reflects, because it goes both ways.
Yes, but...
It affects and reflects what's inside of you for sure. So, yeah, I mean, I think, so the Gnostics were like, hey man, go for it. That's why in 1 John there's all this, no one who lives in him keeps on sinning stuff. Because John is directly dealing with the fact that, no, what you do in the physical world actually matters. God made you a physical being.
Yeah.
And so he wants all parts of you. So, yeah, it matters. But, these guys had created a very, very convenient theology that says, actually, it doesn't. Anytime, I say this all the time, I'm like, anytime there's a theology that helps me to indulge in my in my sinful nature, I'm always going to be skeptical of that type of theology. So the irony of this song to me is that this song could have been written by a person in the church who claimed that they were following Jesus. If you look at it from a docetic perspective, because I don't really think there's anything here that a docetist wouldn't say. So
that's crazy.
So there you go. Pull the veins, tear out the rotted soul. Ew. When I saw veins, I was thinking about that trip I had to the emergency room, where the doctor's like, yeah, I'm gonna give you something for your pain, and he jammed that needle right in the middle of my nerve. And then he's like, you don't feel that? I'm like, yeah, I feel it.
But you don't make big reactions, so unless it's when I kneel on your leg or something when I'm crawling into bed.
Yeah, when there's a knee directly to my shin and I'm not prepared for it. If I'm prepared for it, I'm okay as far as pain tolerance goes. But when you're
relaxing in bed,
when I'm relaxing and trying like mad to go to sleep, and then a knee jams right on the shin,
it's so crazy because I used to do that stuff, like that klutzy stuff, to my sister, and it used to make her so angry. I actually used to feel like it was her. I would be like, I'm not doing it on purpose. Why is she so angry? And then now that
you and Johan
we're very similar in
you
that.
guys would get along great. Unbelievable.
I can't wait to play around at Fortnite with him because I think we've got the same thing. Guys, look at my eye. I pinched it when I was taking out the Halloween contacts. The kids are really disturbed by it.
Well, that shows you that you shouldn't celebrate Halloween.
No, that's not what it shows me at all.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, so the name of the album is Blut Sabbath.
So what
I'm assuming that means Blood Sabbath.
Yeah.
I'm assuming these guys are German.
I would have
Blut.
guessed Blood Sabbath as well.
You know where I learned the word Blut from in German? Was when I was, we were studying World War II.
Yeah.
And Blut und Boden.
Oh.
Blood and soil.
Yep.
That's what the Nazis are saying. YouTube's gonna ban this video. Okay, okay, so they're German, I'm assuming. I really like the tremolo picking. I'm a sucker for tremolo picking in black metal. Like, I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And I think black metal, of course, to me, Magua is the best at it. That's kind of like their signature. A lot of people don't like it because they're like, oh, it's too repetitive, which I get it, but for me, there's no rhyme or reason. You know, sometimes I like repetitive stuff, sometimes I don't.
I'm the
but
same way.
I thoroughly enjoy the tremolo picking in black metal. It's great. Especially if it's only like a 3-minute song or something like that, so it's not like you're not hearing 58 minutes of the same.
Well, yeah, this one I think
sequence.
was like 4 minutes or something.
3 or 4 minutes, you know, it's good. Desecrating with possessed burning eyes, hell has risen, the gods of pain, pull the veins, tear out the rotted soul, take the last breath, snuff out the life, no resurrection, massacrate the Lord of the weak. That's a good one. Because I think what he's doing here is he's combining the term desecrate and massacre. So I'm not even sure if massacrate is even a word. And I love it when people make up words. Danny Fields does it.
Yep.
The Apostle Paul does it.
Yep.
You know, arsenic coite. It's like,
Pretty sure you've done it.
arsenic coite is like, we've never seen this before. So here's massacrate, the Lord of the weak. Buried blessings, destroy the remains of Christ. When he says destroy the remains of Christ, I don't know if he's talking about Jesus' actual body or if he's talking, yeah, it must be. Because it's no resurrection, massacrate the Lord of the weak. Buried blessings, that's an interesting one, because he's saying the fact that Jesus was buried is a blessing, I guess, is his idea. It's interesting. I think Aaron Ra was the first person. Aaron Ra was the first person that I ever ran into who said that they didn't like Jesus. When he and I had that discussion, and of course, I mean, you can look at it. I think he obviously had biases and false premises about it, but most people are like, well, I like Jesus. I just don't like his followers. But these guys don't like Jesus, and you know, they don't say in this song why they don't like Jesus. So I don't know what their issue with Jesus is, but apparently they would be happy if Jesus died. And one of their issues, I guess, is they believe that Christians are weak. They're weak people, which of course he's right. In Christianity, you one of the acts of repentance is to recognize your inability to save yourself and recognize the fact that you need help. And so in order to get into Christianity, you have to admit a certain point of weakness. Yeah. And so he's right. Jesus is the Lord of the weak.
It's so funny because anytime somebody doesn't like Jesus, I feel like, oh, there's a misunderstanding. because he's such an awesome, even if you're not like, let's say you weren't religious at all and you just did like a study on different characters throughout history. Jesus was just a very interesting character. You know, and the things that he did.
There's lots of
interesting
interesting characters in
history.
Yeah,
but he's just like, when you see him in his totality, like how he was in the Old Testament, because a lot of people don't think he was there. They don't realize who he was in the Old Testament. But when you compile all those together, I just don't see how you couldn't like him.
Well, I don't know. I think the people that don't like Jesus are probably have a more accurate perspective on him, because the scripture says that the natural man is at enmity with God. And those who are in the flesh cannot please God. And the word for enmity is ekthra, which is also translated as hatred. So the scripture says that our default setting is to hate God. So it makes sense to me that if a person's looking at Jesus and they're in an unconverted state, why they would hate him. I mean, Jesus got crucified. The same people that were healed by him, and the same people that were saying, "Hey, you're great," were also the same people that were calling for his blood.
Right.
So
yeah.
I actually believe that if you really look at what Jesus kind of, and this is kind of my philosophy on life, you know, there was no neutral opinion on Jesus. He forced you to make a decision. And it had some pretty, you know, look, he's saying, deny yourself, take up your cross and follow me. People crucified me, they're going to crucify you. And so if you're doing Christianity right, people should, I say this all the time, you should be simultaneously compelling and revolting at the same time. And people should go through moods where they love you and hate you simultaneously, because that's what happened with Jesus. So I get this stuff. I get this resentment from a theological perspective. I understand the resentment towards Jesus. We can't relate to it because we love him so much and we know him personally, and we see how he is and how gentle he is in our lives and things of that nature. But I can understand why a person who does not believe and hates God, especially the God of the Bible, I could see why they'd hate Jesus for sure. He said enough stuff to get himself, you know, he told Chorazin, he said, you guys, you think you're going up there? You guys are going straight to hell. He said it to the entire city. That's going to get you crucified.
Yeah.
That's going to get you crucified, man. People are going to kill you. So, I mean, I see where they're coming from. I obviously disagree with them, but I understand why they would have a problem. But yeah, it just sounds like there's some Gnostic background here theologically. There's only about 4 stanzas to this whole song, but it looks like that's what he's talking about. In the burnt out churches, they stand awaiting their doom. See, I think that destroy the remains of Christ is a double entendre that connects verse 2 to verse 3.
Yeah, I agree.
So, you know, the remains of Christ would be the burnt out churches and then all that stuff. Which is another funny thing, this whole concept of sacred space, because for me, if I was because there was all that church burning stuff that happened in the 90s, which, you know, a lot of Christians were interpreting as, oh, these people are just so full of Satan that they burn down churches. And it's like, nobody stopped to think, well, why are Europeans doing this all of a sudden? It might have to do with how our Christian ancestors treated their pagan ancestors. That might have something to do with it.
Right.
But instead of like investigating because I heard about it, and I didn't really start investigating stuff until we started the channel. We started listening to black metal, all the stuff about church burning. And then we saw, I think it was Until the Light Takes Us or something like that. It was a documentary on black metal. And they were talking about what happened and how Christians came in. And I understand it was Catholics, but those are still our people. I think that's ridiculous to say, oh, that's Catholics, it wasn't us. Stop it. You think if John Calvin had a military like the Pope had, that he wouldn't have done the same thing? Look what he did with Michael Servetus. Hello? We did that. Christians did that. I'm not getting into this whole Catholics aren't Christians nonsense. Like, we did that to them. And even if you say Catholics aren't Christians, because I don't want to argue, but even if you say Catholics aren't Christians, we did it with a cross and in the name of Christ. So, of course they're going to burn down your churches. You know what I mean? Like, hello, I'm not co-signing it. I'm not saying you should do that. I'm just saying I understand why. And when I was hearing about it in the 90s, there was no even attempt to understand why these people were doing what they were doing. It was just, these are nasty pagans who hate God and blah, blah, blah. The second part of that, though, is honestly, if I woke up one day and you go to church and your church is burned out because a bunch of people are mad at you, it really would not affect me. Like, the church is just a building. That's not the locus of the presence of God. The locus of the presence of God is not in a building in the New Testament. It was in the Old Testament, but it's not in the New Testament.
Yes, I hear what you're saying, but if you're looking at Catholicism and the stock that they place in their items and the holiness of those items, if you burn a church that has Catholicism at its roots, that's a problem. Because those items are very, 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 very important to them. So, I mean, in our branch of Christianity, the stuff inside the church is not that's not the church. Like, the people are. So as long as you're not burning the people, I mean, we could just move another location, whatever. You know?
Well, in I think technically speaking, the Catholicism would say also that people are the church, and the church is not a building. If you would pin them down, but I agree with you. They put a lot more stock in the concept of localized sacred space, where in a Protestant understanding of Christianity. It's not so. That's not so much. And of course, Protestantism had a lot of utility for that perspective, because during the Protestant Reformation, you could not have first Protestant
Right.
The church would come after you and burn you at the stake.
Right.
So there was a lot of underground movement happening, and a lot of everybody meeting in people's living rooms and things like that. And so they had to reorient their perspective on what sacred space was. So to Protestants, it was like, okay, sacred space is when we're all gathered together and focused on Christ. It doesn't matter what the building is. But I don't think that Protestantism would have had that same understanding of sacred space if there wasn't for the persecution of the Catholic Church.
I agree.
Which, if you look at the pattern of the early Christian church, we were meeting in homes, and then we got driven underground into the catacombs, and then we got out of the catacombs during the Constantinian stuff, and then once we were able to kind of get out in public and look around, then we started building all these elaborate buildings and things like that. And to this moment, I'm still very torn on spending all that money on these. Like, we've got this giant basilica like downtown where we live, and it's a beautiful building, but it's like millions and millions of dollars. And of course you say to yourself, like, couldn't have this been broken down and given to the poor? But then I always think about, that's exactly what the disciples said when the woman was spending like a year's wages on Jesus's feet. Well, So, but that's the argument they used to say. I'm like, oh, you sound exactly like Judas did, because Judas was the one that said that. Yeah.
But I think that, when you're looking at that basilica, if it was being used, it's like the ointment that woman poured on his feet, and she, it was a year's wages for that ointment. Like, to me, that's like you're pouring that out on Jesus's feet, specifically for Jesus. And I think that when you go, man, it's such a
go for it.
I just think that the basilicas and stuff, they don't hold it doesn't feel like it's for Jesus or for the people. It feels like it's a lofty location where people go to, and some people, they don't feel welcome because they don't have proper clothes or proper whatever. And
but that's Protestant churches too. There's a lot of people in our area.
Yes, but the Protestant churches are not that. They don't cost as much as that basilica.
Well,
I mean, make whatever face you want. That basilica is way more.
Well.
And like I said, if it was like a spot where people were coming in and
here's the last thing I'll say about the Protestant churches. I don't know what the percentile of. I don't know how economics works in a Catholic system, so I don't know by parish. Is it X amount of dollars is going to maintain that building? As in, like, let's say 88% of their money is going. We don't know where their money is going,
right?
Because we're not familiar with how the economic structure works. But I do know how the economic structure works in Protestantism, especially in our area. And a lot of it is just going to the pastor's house and his parish and his parsonage and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And very little of it is going out into the community. And if you want to talk about people saying, "Oh, I'm not worthy to come in here because I look a certain way or I smell a certain way," that was the majority report in the Protestant churches. So
You're right.
Your point is well taken. I don't know enough about Catholicism, how they divide up their money to actually make a intelligent critique about it. But my point is there when it's talking about burning out churches. I personally wouldn't care. I'd just say, well, we're going to have church in the living room. And I felt like that was one of the things that made the early Christian church so powerful, was that a lot of these places needed, specialized, localized sacred space, where the Christian church didn't need that. They were able to just go anywhere, and they could turn the catacomb into a holy place. They could turn a living room into a holy place.
Well, I think that there's an understanding when remember when God met Moses through the bush and the bush
Right.
was on fire, and he tells Moses, take off your shoes because this is holy ground.
Right.
Like, that place wasn't holy, but because God was there, it made it holy. And even in the Old Testament, that's a lot where they had, like, you know, certain spots, although that was before all the laws and
Well,
stuff.
actually, that's the point in the Sailhammer book that I was reading, that I read, you know, once a year because it's so fascinating. Sailhammer made the point that the temple was not a good thing. Because now the temple, because before everybody could just directly relate to God. Even Cain, you could directly relate to God and you could have your sacred moment with God there. But as we got farther and farther away from God, the temple then was a localized sacred space. And Sailhammer's making the point that a localized sacred space is not good because God wanted to globalize the sacred space. So it went from global to specific, and then in the New Testament, the idea was it's going to go global again.
Then people keep trying to localize it.
People keep trying to localize it in a building. Sadat. So anyway, there's a lot of, this seems like it's just a straightforward, and maybe it is like, I hate Christians, but there seems to be some Gnostic elements in here that are more than meets the eye. So what do you give the song?
8.3.
This is a 9.2 for me. I like the tremolo picking. I like they stayed committed to the tremolo picking. Obviously not McGuire level, but this was also written in 97, I think. So there you are. It's a good choice, though. Very, very good discussion. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.
She's